أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء وخاتم المرسلين سيدنا ونبينا بالقاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين واللعنة الدائمة الباقية إلى أعدائهم من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه الكريم: خلق الإنسان وعلمه البيان. صلوات پڑھنے پر In this tonight's Thursday night Majlis, I would like to very briefly go through one of the short surahs at the end of the Quran. If you look at the 30th part or the juz of the Quran, you will see that most of the surahs are short, and most of the surahs are of the Makki era of the Prophet's life. Although they are the surahs which were revealed during the time of Makkah, and the immediate context of those surahs are linked to the historical events, but the reason why these surahs have been repeated, and where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the events surrounding the Prophet and the Muslims in Mecca, is also to give a lesson to us. One of the things that we see, which is even relevant now, which is very current for us, is the issue of targeting the personality or a character of a person. When you look at the life of the Prophet, you will see that the people of Mecca knew the Prophet. For 40 years he was raised, he was brought up, he lived in Mecca, they knew him, to the extent that they actually acknowledged him as somebody who is as-Sadiq and al-Amin, the truthful and the trustworthy person. And then all of a sudden you see he comes with a new message, which is based on Tawheed, and they were the people who were mostly into shirk. They didn't like it. The initial response was to just ignore him. But when they realized that, this is not just a passing trend, many times we get many questions from young people, especially when they come and ask me, Maulana, is tattoo halal or haram? Is it jaiz or not? And I say, before even I answer the question whether it's allowed or not, think about it on a long-term basis. Is this you just fading, desire or fashion that you want to have? What will happen when you don't like it after a year? Because it is not just painting on your skin, it's actually something which is under your skin. And to get rid of that, you have to go through under the knife, in the surgery basically. So you have to pay for it and go through the pain. So, before even you think whether it's jaiz or not, think about it. Maybe it's just a, passing, trend that people have, and you don't have to be pulled into it. So maybe sometimes, the people of Mecca initially thought, well, this is, new movements come and die, we'll just ignore it. But when they realized that no, this message of Islam brought by our Prophet, this is not a passing trend, it's going to stay there. What did they do? They couldn't come against him in countering his ideas on a rational level. And so the easiest thing for an enemy is to target the personality and character of the person. They used three famous labels. First, they started saying he is Majnoon, but that didn't didn't work, because if they thought he is Majnoon, the rest of the people were not Majnoon. They knew that there's a difference between Majnoon and Ghayr Majnoon. We see him, we know him. He's not Majnoon. And so then they went back to the drawing table and came up with another label. It's all, attacking the personality. So Majnun didn't work, so now they said, well, he is sha'ir. Because the wordings of the Quran, many times the end of the ayat has this rhyme in it. And so said, this is just, he's just a good poet. And Arabs, although this was era of Jahiliyyah, but the best thing that they knew was sha'r and sha'iri. They said, we know, this is not sha'iri, this is not poetry. And so that level also didn't work. And so they ended up with this issue of Sahir, that he is a sorcerer, a magician, don't listen to him. If he says anything, he's going to, capture your mind, control your mind. And so we see this right in the early days of the Prophet's life. And this is where, one of the surahs which actually talks about it is surah number 104, a very short surah. I'm sure many of you have gone through it or remembered it. Surah al-Humazah. Where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about it, where He begins by saying, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Waylun likulli humazatin lumada. The word wail, what does it mean? Woe. Basically condemning someone because of their ideas or their actions. And waylun likulli humazatin lumaza. Humazah and Lumazah, basically from hams and lams. Hams basically here, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala condemns every Humazah. Humazah means the person who slanders others. Just comes up with labels and accusations. This is more in the context of the life of the Prophet. But remember, these ayat are not just fixed in time for that. It is an implication on our life also. And this is where we see, for example, this whole process of what is happening with this, the newspaper in Paris. The issue of cartoon and everything is the same. It's the modern way of trying to put down the personality and character of someone. It happened in Mecca, it happened after Mecca, and it has happened now, and it's happening now. And, while we condemn this extremism as far as freedom of expression is concerned, we also should be condemning those who actually allow the enemies to slander the image and the name of the Prophet of Islam. These are the people, whether it's Salafis or the Wahhabis, or the extremists, Al-Qaeda or ISIS, these are the people who actually give the opportunity. Means, even if you look at the cartoons from Denmark, it was this government of France actually came out condemning it. The president at that time actually even condemned this present paper for reproducing those cartoons in that time, saying that this is not right. Yes, there is freedom of expression, but don't do this. So the wise people were there, saying this is not the right way of dealing with it. But then when, these people do these, acts of violence, it actually then silences even those who are the wise minds in the Western, political system. And this is where we come to realize that, this issue has been there from day one. And when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about it, He's not only talking about the history of Mecca. Even when we talk about one another, the hurmat of a mu'min is very sacred and muhtaram. It's very important to respect the dignity of a fellow mu'min or a mu'mina. And therefore the ayat begins with the words, وَيْلٌ لِكُلِّ هُمَزَةٍ لُمَزَةٍ. Woe to every slanderer and backbiter. Slanderer is somebody who just makes up things and puts a label on someone. Whereas Lumaza, this is the one who does ghibat. Ghibat is what? Ghibat means, yes, that defect was there in that person, but it was concealed and hidden. To expose that is known as backbiting. And this is where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, you have to be very careful about it. Actually, the word Humazah, to slander somebody. This comes from Hamz in Arabic, and the literal meaning of this word is actually to break something. And then now it's transformed into a different meaning of slandering someone. Actually, by slandering someone, you are, damaging and hurting the image and dignity of a person. And so this is where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is very clear about it. And why would somebody do that? Sometimes, and this is only one reason that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in the context of the events of Mecca, referring to the mushrikeen who used to slander the personality and the dignity of the Prophet, he says, referring to one of the mushrikeen, الَّذِي جَمَعَ مَالًا وَعَدَّدَ. Just because this fellow in Mecca had accumulated wealth, became a very rich person, and to the extent وَعَدَّدَهُ, he was so rich that he would sit down and count how much he has, what is my worth, and this accumulation of wealth and bragging about it creates this sense of arrogance. And with arrogance comes this sense of putting others down. And so there is nothing wrong in having the mal from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If it is received in the right perspective, it becomes fadlullah. It becomes the grace and fazl of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But, and that would only happen when, for example, we acquire it in a halal way, use it in a halal way, and fulfill our duties that we have towards others. But when it is acquired in a haram way, without respect for what is legal and what is illegal, and then no dues are paid from it, this is where the issue of greed comes in, the issue of arrogance comes in, and a person starts thinking about himself or herself that well, I have so much money. Nobody can touch me, nobody can do anything to me. And they even start dreaming that, because of my wealth and money, my fame will stay forever. يَحْسَبُ أَنَّ مَالُهُ أَخْلَدَ. He thinks he will be eternal, he will not die. At least his name will be there. And we know that, this is not the reality. This is just wishful thinking by some of these people who become arrogant. If you remember the surahs that we discussed last 2 years in the month of Ramadan, we had this example of Bani Israel, Fir'aun. That when Bani Israel, Musa alayhi salam, when he took them, rescued them from Egypt, how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, many ayat he would say, they left behind their palaces, their gardens, their farms, their houses, their money and their wealth, and their pounds and this and that. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, they were destroyed, everything was still there, and we made other people inherit it. And so, yes, people could have things, but then the legacy or whatever is there is not necessarily in a positive sense, and the wealth cannot buy eternity for anyone. Salawat. And so we have to look at about this issue, especially the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about it, that although it's in the context of Mecca, but the message is universal, it applies to all at all the time. And then the ayat goes on, Kalla. No, never. They think that their mal and wealth, will give them perpetuity in their name or their image or their life. Kalla layumbadhanna fil hutama. No, they will be thrown into the Jahannam. Hutama is one of the names of Jahannam. In the day of Qiyamah, death will come. They will not be there forever. And after death, we'll have the day of judgment. And with the day of judgment, layumbadhannu, they will be thrown into al-Hutama, which is one of the names of Jahannam. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَا أَدْرَاكَ مَا الْحُطَمَةُ. Do you know what is this Jahannam? Do you know what is it? نَارُ اللَّهِ الْمُوقَدَةِ. You know how severely Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is using the expression here where He says, نَارُ اللَّهِ الْمُوقَدَةِ. It is a fire, al-muqada, which is blazing. Even the fire, in a way roars when it is blazing. And this is the fire which is blazing, which has been created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah relates it to Himself. He says, Narullah, this is the fire of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Al-Muqada, which is blazing. And referring to whom? Al-Humazah and al-Humazah, the slanderer and the one who does the ghibat and backbiting. التي تطلع على الأفئدة. He goes on to describe, sometimes I think we have to hear those words. We say, let us be always positive about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yes, we have to be positive. But sometimes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also gives us very scary scenarios of Jahannam. And look at it, what He says. That this is the fire which is blazing. I have created it. التي تطلع على الأفئدة. This will engulf the hearts. Tell me, is it the heart which is outside, or is it the skin which is outside? So the fire is first going to burn the skin, and then the flesh, and then there is the heart inside. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that this crime or this sin of slandering and backbiting is so serious that when this fire starts, it actually goes all the way in. And it's going to engulf the af'idah, the hearts, إِنَّهَا عَلَيْهِمْ مُوصَدًا, and it will encompass them completely. It will cover them totally. And then ends by saying, فِي عَمَدٍ مُمَدَّدًا, and this blazing fire will have flames which are, outstretched like the columns of fire coming from Jahannam. And the severity of the words used by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala here is not only about the days of Makkah. It is not only about the mushrikeen. This is just one example, an opportunity to condemn the slanderer, those who slandered the personality of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Even though they do not realize that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had guaranteed to the Prophet, وَرَفَعْنَا لَكَ ذِكْرَكَ. We have elevated your dhikr and your memory. You can do whatever you want. Your attempts would be maybe short time, you might be able to have some success, but eventually you will see that the name of the Prophet will come up. Just look at the amount of propaganda which is there against Islam and against Muslims. Even then, if you look at the productions, for example, even you look at this book, The 100 Most Influential people in Human History by Michael Hart. It's amazing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala works in His mysterious ways. He has everyone there. He has Jesus, He has Gandhi, He has Marx and others and Moses. But the first name in the list, He puts the name of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So in a way, yes, we have to condemn those who slander our Prophet even in modern times. But at the end, do not let those cartoons or the images of the Prophet get to you. Remember, the image and the izzat and the honor and dignity of Rasulullah is in the hand of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And He has said, وَرَفَعْنَا لَكَ ذِكْرَكَ. Allah is the one. If He elevates somebody, nobody can bring them down. And so that is there. But the lesson that we learn from this whole issue is that when it comes to the hurmat of a mu'min, when it comes to the sanctity of the dignity of a mu'min, this is something very serious. We have to take it seriously. Look at the severity of the words that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned in this book. Especially when we talk about, the usage of the social media these days. We have to be extra careful, because whatever is said, once it is gone, it is gone. There is no way of taking it back. I remember reading one story of a interesting a rabbi talking about this, and they have stories also of their own, where somebody had slandered somebody else's name, and this person who was slandered, eventually goes to the house of the other person. The person who had done the ghibat eventually felt sorry for what he has done, goes to the house of that person, and he says, I've come to ask you for your forgiveness. And he says, well, I'll forgive you, provided you do one thing. And he says, whatever you say, I'll do it. He went inside and brought a pillow of feather in it. And he gave him a knife. He says, take this, go to the central square of the city, and rip this pillow open and let the feathers fly. And then follow every feather wherever the wind takes it and bring it back. He says, this is what you have done. You have slandered my name, spread it all over. Now you are coming to me and saying, forgive me. What will happen to the abuse which has already gone out? Especially with all, modern equipments that we have, it goes very, very far away. And it's not possible to get it back. And this is where we have to really think about it. That when this surah talks about وَيْلٌ لِكُلِّ هُمَزَةٍ لُمَزَةٍ, this is not only for the mushrikeen of Makkah. This is for us also. Just think about it when Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam in the only Hajj that he did, which is known as the last farewell Hajj, which was actually also the first one, right by Masjid al-Haram in front of the Kaaba, is talking to some of the prominent Sahabi. I don't remember exactly the name, whether it was Salman Farsi or Abu Dharr Ghifari. And even I think one of the Ravis is Abdullah bin Amr ibn As, who says that Rasulullah there talks to the Kaaba. And he says, O the Bayt of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I know that your hurmat is the greatest of the hurmat in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. La hurmatuka inda Allahi azim. But then Rasulullah said something which is for us. This is what we have to remember all the time. Then he says, O Kaaba, but remember, hurmatul mu'min a'zamu min hurmatika. But O Kaaba, the hurmat and sanctity of a mu'min is greater than you. Kaaba is our, focus of our ibadat every day. Millions of Muslims around the world turn towards it. And it is considered to be the holiest spot for us on this earth. And Rasulullah says that when it comes to the hurmat of a mu'min, it is greater than the hurmat of you or the Kaaba. And so we have to be very careful about these issues. These are Islam is not only namaz and roza and giving in charity or going for Hajj. It has much to do also with interhuman relationships. Especially when we talk about, the dignity of the mu'mineen and how to maintain and respect it towards one another. Salawat. अमीर अल-मोमिनीन की ज़िंदगी में उनके मज़लूमियत का एक पहलू यही है ना कि बनु उमैया ने तकरीबन 50 से 70 साल तक हर जुमा के खुतबे में अमीर अल-मोमिनीन की हुर्मत को ख़त्म करने की कोशिश की। یعنی اس طرح سے یہ انہوں نے پروپیگنڈا کیا ہوا تھا کہ جب امیر المؤمنین کی شہادت واقع ہوئی ہے اور شام میں جب خبر پہنچی ہے کہ علی کو ضربت محراب میں لگی مسجد میں، تو شامیوں کے ذہن میں جو تصور تھا، یعنی جو ابن ملجم نے کیا تھا اس سے بدتر یہ ہے، امیج جو قائم کیا تھا معاویہ اور معاویہ کے اسٹیبلشمنٹ نے امیر المومنین کے بارے میں شامیوں کے ذہن میں، وہ یہ تھا کہ جب انہیں خبر ملی کہ علی جو ہے ان پر حملہ مسجد میں ہوا، تو سب سے پہلے سوال ان کے ذہن میں یہ آتا ہے کہ علی مسجد میں، یعنی ان کے ذہن میں مسجد اور علی جو ہے ایک جگہ پہ جمع نہیں ہو سکتے تھے۔ اسے کہتے ہیں شخصیت شکنی، ایک مومن کی حرمت کو ختم کرنا، اور یہ بہت بڑی بات ہے، اتنی بڑی بات ہے کہ اس سورے میں آپ دیکھیں کہ خداوند عالم نے نار اللہ الموقدہ، کہ یہ وہ آگ ہے جہنم کی جو خود اللہ نے لگائی ہے، اور یہ انسان کو ہر طرح سے وہ محیط ہوگی اور اسے گرفتار کرے گی۔ لہٰذا ان مسائل کو ہمیں سوچنا چاہیے، البتہ جس طرح سے خداوند عالم نے رسول اسلام کے بارے میں یہ ضمانت دی ہے وَرَفَعْنَا لَكَ ذِكْرَكَ، علی کی بات بھی یہی ہے، یہ جو کچھ چاہا انہوں نے کیا، لیکن آخر میں ہوا کیا؟ چھٹے امام کے زمانے تک بہت سے سنیوں کو بھی نہیں معلوم ہے کہ یہ خلفائے راشدین کا بھی عنوان جو ہے نا، ابھی تو ہر انسان کہتا ہے 4 خلیفہ تھے، چھٹے امام کے زمانے تک علی اس میں شامل نہیں تھے، لیکن یہ خود سنی علماء کی محنت اور کوشش تھی کہ نہیں، علی ضرور اس میں شامل ہیں۔ چھٹے امام کے زمانے میں یعنی بنو عباس کے زمانے میں امیر المومنین کو خلفاء راشدین میں شامل کیا گیا ہے، لیکن تمام محنت کے باوجود کسی بھی سنی عالم نے آج تک یہ نہیں کہا ہے کہ معاویہ بھی خلفاء راشدین میں سے ہے۔ یہ در حقیقت دلیل ہے کہ جس کو خدا بلند کرتا ہے اسے کوئی گرا نہیں سکتا ہے۔ یعنی امیر المومنین کے خلاف اتنی باتیں ہوئی، لیکن پھر بھی نام علی کا بلند ہے اتنی مخالفت کے باوجود۔ تو بہرحال ایک طرف تو یہ خدا کا کرشمہ ہے محمد اور علی کے بارے میں، دوسری طرف ہماری بھی ذمہ داری ہوتی ہے کہ ہمیں سبق سیکھنا چاہیے ان حالات سے، خصوصاً جو موجودہ حالات ہیں، کہ ہمیں ایک دوسرے کا احترام کرنا چاہیے، اور ایک دوسرے کی حرمت کے بارے میں یہ ذہن میں رکھیے کہ یہ زیادہ مقدس ہے بنسبت ایک انسان کے جسم اور مال کے۔ صلوات پڑھنے ایک بار اور۔ کربلا میں اگر آپ دیکھیں تو سب سے محترم جان کس کی تھی؟ امام حسین علیہ السلام کی۔ حجت خدا وہ تھے، امام وقت وہ تھے، نواس رسول وہ تھے، اور اگر کوئی آ کے ان کی توہین کرے تو حسین کا چاہنے والا جو ہے اس توہین کو برداشت نہیں کر سکتا ہے۔ آپ دیکھیں کہ جب جنگ ہو رہی تھی وہ وقت آتا ہے کہ ابو سمامہ سیداوی جو ہے امام کی خدمت میں آتے ہیں، اور آنے کے بعد یعنی ان شہدائے کربلا کی خواہشات بھی عجیب و غریب ہیں۔ یعنی اس وقت جو ہے یہ جنگ کا عالم تھا، تیر اور تلوار کی بارش ہو رہی ہے، لیکن وہاں بھی خواہش کیا ہے کہ مولا ایک بار اور ہم چاہتے ہیں آپ کے اقتداء میں نماز جماعت پڑھیں۔ شریعت کا حکم تھا نماز خوف پڑھ لیتے آپ 2 رکعت اپنے گھوڑے پہ بیٹھے بیٹھے، لیکن نہیں، ابو سمامہ سیداوی کی خواہش یہ تھی کہ ایک بار اور حسین کے پیچھے نماز جماعت پڑھیں۔ امام نے دعائے خیر کی، اور چونکہ دشمن بھی بہرحال کلمہ پڑھتے تھے، پیغام بھیجتے ہیں دشمن کو کہ ظہر کا وقت ہو چکا ہے، جنگ کو روکا جائے، لیکن وہاں سے یزیدی لشکر کا ایک افسر حسین بن نمیر ملعون جواب جو دیتا ہے، یہ صرف ہم آپ کی معلومات کے لیے اسے ریپیٹ کر رہے ہیں، ورنہ یہ اس قابل نہیں ہے کہ ممبر پر ہم ریپیٹ کریں۔ وہ ملعون یہ کہتا ہے یا حسین صلاتک لا تقبل، نعوذ باللہ، اے حسین آپ کی نماز جو ہے قبول نہیں ہوگی، آپ نماز پڑھ کے کیا کریں گے؟ اس ملعون نے یہ سوچا نہیں کہ یہ کس سے یہ جملہ کہہ رہا ہے۔ یہ وہ حسین ہیں کہ جو آل رسول میں لازمی شمول ہے، ان کا کوئی اختلاف اس بات پہ نہیں ہے۔ یہ حسین ہے کہ جن کا ذکر تشہد میں آتا ہے جب آپ صلوات پڑھتے ہیں۔ تمام مسلمان جب آپ صلوات پڑھتے ہیں آل محمد میں حسین کی شمولیت جو ہے یقینی اور اتفاقی ہے۔ اس کے بارے میں یہ کہنا کہ آپ کی نماز قبول نہیں ہوگی۔ جناب حبیب جو صرف علی اور حسین کے ماننے والے نہیں تھے بلکہ دوست اور محب بھی تھے، ان سے حسین کی یہ بے حرمتی اور توہین برداشت نہ ہو سکی۔ سب سے سن رسیدہ اور بزرگ مجاہد کربلا کا اپنے تلوار کو نکالتے ہیں، فوراً حسین بن نمیر پر حملہ کرتے ہیں اور اسے گھوڑے سے زمین پر پھینکتے ہیں۔ اتنے میں اس کا پورا لشکر آتا ہے، اس کو بچا کے لے جاتا ہے، لیکن جناب حبیب کے دل میں جو غصہ تھا کہ میرے مولا کی توہین ہمارے لیے قابل برداشت نہیں ہے، وہ اپنے حملے کو جاری رکھتے ہیں، یہاں تک کہ یہ ضعیف مجاہد حسین کا کب تک لڑتا، ایک ملعون آ کے وار کرتا ہے اور جناب حبیب جو ہیں زمین کربلا پر بیٹھ جاتے ہیں۔ ابھی اسی عالم میں بیٹھے ہوئے تھے کہ پیچھے سے ایک نیزہ کے وار ہوتا ہے اور وہ نیزہ جو ہے سینے کی طرف نکل آتا ہے اور جناب حبیب کی روح جو ہے مفارقت کر کے ملأ اعلیٰ کی طرف پرواز کر جاتی ہے۔ امام حسین علیہ السلام نے آ کے جب دیکھا ہے اپنے دوست اور حبیب کے لاشے کو، دشمن اس وقت آ چکے تھے اور انہوں نے جناب حبیب کے سر کو تن سے جدا کر دیا تھا۔ عزاداران حسین، یہ جب قاتل جو ہے اپنے فخر میں کہ ہم نے حسین کے بہت بڑے اور محترم سپاہی کو شہید کیا ہے، سر کو جو ہے ایک اپنے گھوڑے کی گردن میں لٹکا دیتا ہے، اور اسی عالم میں وہ کوفہ پہنچتا ہے۔ کوفے کے دروازے پر قاسم بن حبیب تھے، وہاں جناب حبیب کے ایک جوان بیٹے تھے جنہوں نے بابا کا جب سر دیکھا تو وہ قاتل کے ساتھ ساتھ چلنے لگے۔ ابن زیاد کے دربار میں بھی ساتھ ساتھ رہے۔ جب وہ دربار سے نکلا ہے اس وقت وہ قاتل پلٹ کے پوچھتا ہے جوان میرے پیچھے پیچھے کیوں آ رہے ہو؟ اس وقت قاسم نے ایک جملہ کہا ہے شخص یہ میرے بابا کا سر ہے، مجھ سے صبر نہیں ہوتا ہے کہ میرے بابا کا سر جو ہے تیرے گھوڑے کی گردن میں لٹک رہا ہے، خدا را مجھے دے دو تاکہ ہم جا کے دفن کریں۔ قاسم بن حبیب سے صرف اتنا کہیں گے، قاسم صرف ایک باپ کا سر ہے یہاں پر، لیکن سید سجاد کے چہرے پر دیکھیں کتنی تکلیف کا عالم ہے۔ وہاں صرف ایک بابا کے سر کی بات نہیں ہے، چچاؤں کا سر ہے، بھائیوں کا سر ہے، رشتہ داروں کا سر ہے، اور وہ ایک مظلوم امام ہے جو باپ کے لاش کو بے گور و کفن کربلا میں چھوڑ کے آیا ہے۔ الا لعنۃ اللہ علی القوم الظالمین سیعلم الذین ظلموا ای منقلب ینقلبون۔ خداوند اس قلبات قبول فرما، ہمارے گناہوں کو بخش دے، ہماری توفیقات میں اضافہ فرما۔ خداوندہ جہاں جہاں شیعہ علی ان کو اپنے حفظ و امان میں رکھ۔ خداوندہ انہیں توفیق دے ہم سب لوگوں کو کہ ہم قرآن اور سیرت محمد آل محمد پر عمل کر سکیں، خصوصاً جب حقوق الناس کی بات ہوتی ہے آپسی حقوق کا ہم خیال رکھ سکیں اور ایک دوسرے کا احترام بھی کریں۔ خداوندہ امام کے ظہور میں تعجیل فرما۔ ربنا تقبل منا انک انت السمیع العلیم۔